Episode 3 of Demasked. There are a lot of similarities between these three groups of people. Toddlers, narcissists, and SIVS, the strong independent victims, or the stunted infantilized virtue signallers. We all know who we're talking about there. These three groups of people are very similar. Nearly all of these people were once toddlers, and most SIVs stay in that mindset and are hence narcissists. The reason that they are in this mindset is because from the minute they are born until the end of their lives, they are not held to the same standards as the non-SIVs. They're given their own separate sports leagues. They're given their own special safe spaces. They're allowed to have tantrums. They're allowed to cry. They're not held accountable for their violent acts. It's seen as a joke. Just like if a toddler hits you, you're not really going to get mad, are you? But for some reason, SIVs can be adults and still get away with that stuff and still be seen as the victim if a non-SIV retaliates. Hence, we'll start at the top of this list. Lack of accountability. If you can see that, lack of accountability. Because the SIVs are never held accountable for their actions, they do not have to grow up emotionally. They can stay in that toddler narcissist mindset forever. The lack of accountability persists through their whole lives, through their education, in the workplace, in their personal lives, never being held accountable. It's always someone else's fault. Emotional instability. When a toddler is getting emotional because they're hungry or they want to sleep or whatever, their parents cater for them. They're there for them. The toddler's helpless. They can't do anything. We have the same attitude in society towards SIVs, grown-ass adult SIVs, who run around with their emotions in complete turmoil, or at least they want you to believe that is the case so that it evokes your empathy in them to manipulate you. And we're told that that's okay just because they have different hormonal cycles than the non-SIVs. When a toddler is emotionally unstable, they need others to stabilize their emotions, mummy and daddy. So they look outside for someone else to stabilize their emotions. So do narcissists. So do SIVs. SIVs can't be single for more than a week or they go insane. Particularly now there's social media. They don't have a break between relationships where they can regroup, think, reflect, introspect. They do not do these things. So they also have low empathy, feigned empathy. The toddler doesn't care about the needs or desires of its parents. It doesn't have any concept of that. And the narcissist doesn't have any empathy towards others, or very little if they do. And a lot of the time they just fake the empathy by seeing those behaviors in others and trying to mirror them. Likewise, SIVs don't have any empathy for non-SIVs. I mean, do I need to even give examples of that? You live in the same world I do. SIVs, just like narcissists and toddlers, are extremely sensitive to rejection. They are extremely sensitive to criticism, and they are extremely sensitive to disagreements. In fact, they can barely differentiate between those three things, because they have the same emotional response to those three things, and they don't think. They just run off of their emotions like a toddler. But that's only because they are allowed to, because they are not held accountable. It's not necessarily something that is ingrained in them, but if they're not forced to grow up, then why would they? A toddler would be sensitive to rejection, because if no one's listening to its cries, it might starve to death. It's biological reason. It's extra sensitive to criticism because they don't know the difference between right and wrong. And they take criticism as an attack on themselves, not just their behaviour. They're extra sensitive to disagreements because a toddler can't perceive the world outside itself, differing opinions. The SIVS, the narcissistic SIVS, they often love to disagree. They might agree with a criticism you have made of them, but their ego will tell them to disagree, to defend their ego, because they feel a sense of rejection from criticism. They'll do this by throwing tantrums. They'll not say, hey, let's have a reasonable adult conversation about this criticism, about this disagreement that's made me feel rejected. They will just have a tantrum. A tantrum. They'll have the silent treatment. They'll refuse to talk. The passive, aggressive, covert, narcissistic SIVS. Or the overt, grandiose, narcissistic SIVS will completely start yelling, maybe breaking your stuff. If you live in the same property as a SIV, God forbid, they might start just taking your stuff out on the street and destroying it in front of your face. Or maybe they'll invite Chad over and drink milk with him, so to speak. Now, isn't it weird that we allow, in a lot of situations where it shouldn't be warranted, for grown-ass adults to cry just because they are SIVs? I mean, there is a time and a place where it's acceptable for anyone to cry, but we see SIVs crying all the time over the most ridiculous things. And they do this because it helps them get their way. It's a form of manipulation. When the cries and the tantrums don't allow the SIVs to get their way, we all know what they're going to do. They're going to do what the toddler does. They're going to run to mummy and daddy, aka the government. They'll make up their victim narrative, the martyr narcissist. They'll make up some bullshit story. And they'll try and use the government to just take everything that you have and put a restraining order on you out of spite or something. And if they can't actually get you on anything legally, they might turn to Chad. They might get one of their, I guess it would be kind of a simp Chad. They might get like one of their non-SIVs in their manipulation web to come and inflict violence upon you. Just like the government inflicts violence upon non-SIVs, and a parent will protect its child from a predator in the wilderness. Anyway, SIVs, narcissists, toddlers, all very similar because society doesn't hold them accountable. So hold the SIVs accountable and stop being a simp. Alright, thanks guys. Please donate in the video description below some cryptocurrencies, and I'll see you in the next one.